time I'll just do a little introductions too. So I don't know how many of you that do know me. I recognize a lot of faces. But I'm Brent Taylor. I'm from Oregon, so a long trek to get here, but it's always worth it. Just is. Some of my dearest friends in the world and some of my closest brothers that have fought many, many battles with me run MOV. They're on the executive team. That I call them more than, they're not just my friends, they're my brothers. And might even be closer than some of them than I am of my own family, but that is, I have a great family, so that's saying a lot about them. I'm blessed with an amazing family. So if you guys saw the topic that I'm going to be speaking on today, if you've paced life with me long enough, or if you've been part of SoulCon, or if you've listened to the Man Up Monday, where I did the presentation, this is kind of how I try to live my life. Not kind of, this is how I live my life. Took a lot of work. It took, I'll never finish writing the book. Let's just put it that way. It is, you're gonna get to know me. You're gonna get to know my style. You're gonna get to know my pain. You're gonna get to know a little bit about my life. And I am honored that they asked me to speak, but I'll be honest with you, this intimidates the crap out of me. I train for a living. I facilitate academies, I facilitate classes, which I'll get into in a second. But talking about my vulnerability, and talking about my pain, and talking to men, of how we need to step into that calling, of how to lead and love through that. And I'll tell you why it says loving and leading instead of leading and loving. I'll break all that down. But I appreciate you guys taking the time to be here. This has nothing to do with me, but every man sitting in here today needs to hear what God's put on my heart. God made that very clear to me. It has nothing to do with me, because if it was up to me, if it was just on me to be teaching y'all and not Christ that encouraged me and inspired me to do this, I think your cup would still feel empty by the end of this. And my goal is for you to not understand with Christ. And we just sang some songs. We just sang some amazing, beautiful songs that have tied in wonderfully to a lot of the men's presentations here. We didn't know what the worship team was going to be singing. We didn't even know we knew what our topics were, but we didn't know what people were going to speak on. And seeing how God has tied those together is pretty phenomenal. Like I've shared it with Eric and I've shared it with Travis. I said, you brothers are stepping on my toes. Because I'm like, direct scriptures, direct quotes, direct things. And that's when I know I pace life closely with these guys. But also that's how God works, especially in the masculine heart. And that's how God works in men that are obedient and surrender to Him. So a little bit about me. First and foremost, I will always start off that I'm a Christ follower. I'm a husband of my beautiful bride of 21 years named Mary Ann. I have an amazing daughter named Brooklyn. She's 17. And I have an amazing son, Cole, which is now 14. And I have a sibling. I'm a brother to my sister and my brother. But I'm a son to two amazing parents. I don't have a parent wound. I don't have a father wound. I know a lot of folks do. I was blessed to have that. I have the greatest man I know in my life that walks the earth today is my father. But he wasn't perfect. And neither am I, and neither of you. But we strive to be like the one that is perfect. And we keep one step at a time to try to fulfill that. Will we ever be Jesus? No. Thankfully, no. I'll say that out loud. It's a tough job. But I can say that all that I have on here about me being an officer, I worked in adult community corrections, parole, probation for 21 years. I've worked with individuals that commit, like justice involved is what we call them, for about 23 years of my life. Started off with juveniles and I've transitioned into working with adults. Those that know my story, I don't know why, and I question God sometimes on this, and it's okay. I'll just say that right now. If you want to debate with me later, great. It's okay to question God. He wants us to bring our questions to Him, And one of the questions I've asked is, why have you selected me to work the positions that I work for my career? Because I work with those that abuse children and the vulnerable people. I work with sexual offenders. I work with domestic violence clients. I supervise our person-to-person units, and I supervise a team of, I think I have 14 folks now that supervise both. And it is hard. It's hard. I'm on our trafficking unit. I've seen it all. I've seen it all. I'm on our Internet Crimes Against Children task force. I would not wish it upon my worst enemy to see the things I've seen, and I've asked God numerous times to release me from that, and he hasn't, and I don't think he will, to be honest with you. I'm passionate about it, but it leads into some of my conversation that I'll talk about of how draining that can be, especially when other things in life aren't going well. My wife, Marianne. Sometimes, often, if Bill Shine was here, he'd slap me. My bride, Marianne. She has battled chronic illness for 15 years. Realistically, my wife has battled chronic illness for 42 years, and she's 42. She's never been that healthy. But for the last 15 years, her and I have paced. I could probably go through her health ailments that we've battled in the last 15 years, and it would fill this entire hour. And I wish I was kidding. I'm not. But the biggest ones were a blood disorder that nearly took her life when she was pregnant with my son. It's called ITP. And she had to go through tons of chemotherapy type sessions, and finally the only thing that saved her life was when they removed her spleen. Weird, but that's what they did. And then 5 years later, she was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and battled that for several years, and she is in remission, thankfully. I had to go through a lot of changes, had to get a complete hysterectomy, had to get her breasts and chest cut out completely. When they did the implants, her body rejected it, so she had a thing called implant rejection syndrome, which almost took her too. They didn't know what it was, but it was, and so she has gone through hospital stay after hospital stay and battled for years. And then 3 years ago, she had a thankfully benign brain tumor that they removed. And unless God decides that it's over in regards to this health journey for her, we know that there's a lot of things just looming. She's got a lot of stuff going on. But thankfully right now, we're in a good season. Like I said before, I work in specialized units. And it takes its toll. It does. But someone has to do it. And if it wasn't for Christ, I'll lead into it later. Yeah, I know where I'd be, and it would not be here. It would not be. All that would look probably upside down. Because I've tried running away many times. The reason I thought this topic was important is, while I can share, and if you get to know me, one of the biggest things you can do to upset me is try to compare any trials that you guys are currently facing with me or my bride. What I mean by that is, it's called a comparison trap. It's called compared to you, I haven't gone through anything. That's a lie from the pit of hell. Thankfully, you might not have navigated some of the things my bride and I have navigated. But you all have navigated something, and some of you guys have navigated some horrendous things. And some of you will navigate some horrendous things. Hopefully, by the grace of God, that doesn't happen. But we know statistically in a room of this size, some of you may be currently in that right now. I know some of you personally that I've paced life with. I've walked through chemotherapy and cancers with you and your bride. I have walked through the loss of children. I have walked through miscarriages. I have walked through runaway kids, wayward children. I have walked through A, B, C, we can keep naming it off. I've had the privilege and honor to walk alongside several of you. But it's hard. So are you tired of the battle? Afraid? Angry? Tired of the stress or anxiousness? Does it feel like you have too much weight to carry, problems to solve, or too much pain to hear or bear? This is a better way. There is a better way, and his name is Jesus. He is the life, he is the truth, and he is the way. Matthew 11:28 is one that I go to often. Because I am weary often. Life can be burdensome often. I cannot imagine carrying this yoke without Christ carrying it for me. He always makes it a little lighter. Never takes it completely off me. It always gets a little lighter, so I can take one step in front of another. Men, I take it the men that are in this room are believers. If not, I challenge you, and hopefully you guys leave here, this conference, with a closer, intimate relationship with Christ. But really, I want you also to leave here stepping into the calling and your role as a man. A man in your relationships, a man within your family, a man within your church, a man within your community, a man within your employment. We're called to love and lead well. I used to always say, lead and love well. But some of you guys know Carl Cohen. And he said, how can you lead if you don't love? He said, I would switch those if I were you. And Carl's right. When I would lead, and I've led in a lot of capacities, but I failed almost every time I didn't start off with love. So I now say, we're called to love and lead. As I put in these 2 slides here, as you guys see the 2 columns, what the world says a man is, and what the Word says a man is, look very different. I don't know about you, but I, even through a lot of work, even through years of process, counseling, I still find myself falling into that left-hand side a little bit at times. But if this is all too familiar for you in regards to what the world says, I challenge you today to shift. Shift into what the Word says you should be. Being strong and tough can be different things. You can be a tough guy. Tough guys generally don't know how to be gentle. Strong guys do. There is a difference. When it says, be watchful, stand firm, and be strong. Humble and compassionate. Humility. The strongest men I know in this world are humble. They're humble beasts. They are. It's even a company. It's a humble beast out there. Willing to show emotion. What can I say this without myself getting emotional? But if you're unable or willing to share emotion, I promise you it will stunt your growth as a man more than you'll ever know. Sacrificial and servants. We think we're tough, we think we're strong guys, we think we need to be the leaders, trudging forward, we need to do ABC. No, you need to lead by being sacrificial and being a servant. You still serve those that you lead, especially within your families, especially within your church. Purity, focus, loyalty, committed. Guys, we're called to be shepherds of our flock. He has entrusted us with so much responsibility, especially if you're a father, especially if you're a husband, especially if you're a leader within your church. Often pastors are referred sometimes to the shepherd. Shepherds of their flock. God's obviously Jesus. God's the ultimate one. But you are called and stepped into a position and chose to be in a position. Don't forget, I chose to be in management. I chose to be a husband. I chose to be a father. If we choose it, step into it and be the best version of that, God. And that's only done through God. Spiritual leadership is not a rank to be achieved or a title to be earned. It is a mantle to be taken up in service to others. Came across this quote, and it is now in my office. But it's not a rank or something to be achieved or something, it's just to service to others. When you love and lead well, it all changes. But one cannot lead well, like I said before, guys, without loving well. There's lover leadership up there. I'm trying not to be the guy that reads just over slides. I don't like that at all. But how many of you guys have examples of people that you've followed that were in that right-hand column far more than they were in the left? And how satisfying or how seen did you feel? How valued did you feel? Because I have a boss currently that does a pretty good job with love. The one I had prior to that was hard. Especially when life is out of control and life is chaotic. And sometimes I feel like at one time in my life, the only peace I had was my employment. And that was kind of scary at at times, especially with what I do, but it was my break. It was a break from the chaos. But when both are out of control, it's hard. And if you have a leader that loves and has that transparency and empathy, it changes. As a good listener, men, we need to be good listeners. Travis said it so well in his presentation of, you give me a problem, I'll solve it. My wife and I have these conversations a lot, that I just need to learn to just shut up. We need to learn to shut up well too. Because sometimes it's just, they just need us to listen and hear without solving, which is really hard for me. Really hard for me. Because I've been put in situations that I had to make the decisions. I had to do it all. She didn't have the strength or energy to do so. And then when she starts feeling better and starts getting back to the rhythm, it's a little bit of like, hey, get out of my way. Like I've been doing this and I've been doing it well. And me surrendering that back to her a little bit, saying, you're right. You feel value when you can play a part in things. It might not be done as quickly, as efficiently as this, but okay. It's okay. Your kids, mowing the lawn, all those things. I can mow it a lot better than my son can. But how is he gonna learn? And I can do it in half an hour. It's gonna take us together 45 minutes or so, because it's less, but it's that additional time and investment. That's how we build people. It's how we love and lead well. So, men, we go through tons of trials and strains. If any of these on this list hit home, because I wish I could say almost not all of them have been a part of my life and a season for me. I can say probably not the addiction part as much as me. It's part of my personality too. I don't have a great addictive personality. But have I coped with inappropriate things? Oh, absolutely. But sexual intimacy issues. I know this is being recorded, but my bride knows that I don't hold back. The last 15 years has been hard. It's been hard because that is something that we had to pivot and adjust to. Or when you're having a conversation with the doctor saying, you can't do this at this point, in this moment, because of health issues that would do more harm than good. And instead of sharing my issues with my wife, instead of sharing those, I kept them. And sometimes I'd cope in inappropriate ways or find other outlets. Personal health trials. Some of you have that. Health trials of a loved one. COVID, pandemic, a lot of people lost employment. A lot of people shifted. If you didn't, great, congratulations. If the pandemic didn't affect you one bit, or the whatever you want to call it, I'll call you a liar. Because it affected us all in one way or another, or it affected ones we love. Yeah. Depends what state you live in too. I'm from Oregon. It affected us. We shut down. There's I think 1 or 2 churches in the entire state that maintained their doors open. Mine didn't. But I also couldn't put my wife in a risky situation too, not knowing what COVID would do and not knowing those things, so I had to protect her, and so we did not go. We isolated. We hunkered down, which was not good for any of our mental health. It wasn't good for, I love my family, but when we're in a house together 24/7, 7 days a week, whew, have mercy. Yeah. Guys, you're not alone. It's okay. It's okay not to be okay. But often we just choose to stay that way too, though. We choose to stay in it. If you guys have paced life with me long enough and have heard me speak before, you guys know how I feel about James. The book of James is a great book, but you'll hear me often say, shut up, James. Because probably one of the most powerful books in the Bible for me to read through and say, really? And James, when it says, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let the steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. I'm supposed to consider it joy, pure joy, when my wife's going through what she's going through, what I'm going through. I'm supposed to have joy in those moments. Yes. Is it easy? No. Have I failed? All the time. Still do. But when I shift my perspective, and when you all shift your perspective of, no, how can we look for it? How can we inventory this and see the beauty within it? How can it have made us grow closer in different ways? Made us rely on each other in different ways. That really it did produce that steadfastness. And we're prepared. My wife and I are prepared for more trials to come. And because we were forged in that fire. Iron sharpens iron. My wife is my best friend. We sharpen each other. It's not just a verse for men. You and your bride, or you and your partner, or you and your kids should be sharpening one another. Trials and hardships are often used by Satan. I said earlier too, I never capitalized the word Satan, but I did today. Just because it's my own mental thing that I don't want to give him the credit of having a capital S. But the thing is, very powerful. How many of you guys know 1 Corinthians 10:13? You know it by heart? Okay. Just for the sake of time, I'll read it for you because I trust you. But also, I went over last time, and I don't want to be that guy. So, no temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation, he will also provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure it. Endurance is key to overcoming trials. I have some dear brothers in this room here that have endured a lot. I've seen men love and lead phenomenally well when their brides were diagnosed with cancer. I've had men reach out and say, hey, let's talk. And I am just in awe at some of their posture and how well they've done and how well I didn't at first. I learned through my failures. I started off the slide, you guys saw the slide, that the cup was full. And now I have a slide that the cup, when your cup feels empty. I throw the word feels, and I put the word feels in there because that is all it is a feeling. With Christ, it's never empty. It can feel empty though, but that's us. We're the ones that distance. We're the ones that isolate. We're the ones that pull back. And that's normal. It really is. It's called a season. But it's a feeling. And when we decide to lay it before God, say, please fill my cup. A lot of our songs this week, I'm like, yep. These are just, the questions you guys may have. How do I balance all this? What if I have nothing left in me to give? Good. Because it means it's time to become reliant on Christ to fill you and take over. The yoke is heavy, but the burden is light. God, without Christ, I know where I'd be. Have I felt at my breaking point? Often. Have I broke? Yeah, I have. Has my spouse broke? Yeah, she has. Have my kids? Yeah, they have. We're restored, but there's still those fractures within the cup when you look at it. He's restored us. Still, we can be filled, but you see, the wounds are still there. The pain is still there. But only through Christ are we able to balance it. When it says, how do I balance it all? I always lead off. Well, first of all, you often can't on your own. Actually, you can't on your own. Write out everything. Take inventory of your responsibilities. One of the biggest disservices I did to my bride was not share with her the pain I was going through. It pissed her off. It made her upset. She said, how dare you keep that from me? I thought I was protecting her. That is not loving her well or allowing her to love me well, because how is she supposed to try to comfort me or love me if she doesn't know the trials that I'm going through? Thankfully, I had men in my life that I was able to share some of those with. But the person that is second to me, there's Christ and my bride, I was withholding out of my thought that I was protecting her. tell you right now, you're not. If you withhold things from your bride, your relationship needs work. It's okay to say no to good things. I am that guy. Hey, can you help at church? Yeah. Hey, can you take on this project at work? Yep. Hey, can you help out the neighbor? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then I am just average at everything. I just am stretched too thin. It's okay to say, this is not a good season for me to volunteer right now. It's okay to say, you know what? Not a good time. Because when I do those things, I take away from my family, I take away from really what God has said, this is where I want you to lead. And when things are better, I can lead in other areas. I can volunteer my time in other areas. I can stretch myself out. But it's okay to understand the importance of rest. I suck at it. It's not actually, this is an area that I have tremendous work left to do. I don't sleep a lot. I can't sleep a lot unless things would have to be ridiculously different in my household. It is not uncommon for me to get up at 4:30 in the morning to get a workout in, get to work by 6:30, get home by 5:30, and be cleaning, be cooking, and doing bedtime routines and grocery shopping until 9 o'clock at night. And then what? Then what? I don't have any time with my bride, I don't have any time this, so I sacrifice sleep. I have. But I promise you that when I was able to surrender my sleep and some of my rest to Christ, He has sustained me. He has. He said, I will give you the capacity to handle this. So I function on less sleep than the average person. But I am looking forward to that day when I can focus more on rest. The rest doesn't always mean sleep. What if I have nothing left to give? James says, good. Count it all joy. But we must surrender and pray. And guys, prayer does not need to be anything formal. My prayer with God is just like I'm doing right now. I'm just talking to you guys. I know He's God. I give Him the respect that God deserves. But if God and Jesus is walking alongside of us, He wants us to talk to Him like a friend. He wants He wants us to talk to Him first. He wants us to share. He wants us to lay this out before Him and our communities. Pray for specific things. In His time, He'll answer them. Or He doesn't, and that's still unanswered. I've prayed for a lot of things that haven't come to fruition, and they may never. And because God has a better plan for me. I don't know if on the other side of heaven, when I'm there, will some things be revealed to me? I don't know. I hope so. Of like, hey, see this seed, see this is why this happened. That would be awesome. I don't know. I might be up there and it's all erased. I don't have any thoughts of any of my past, my worries, I don't know. But my earthliness. And men, those here that are veterans, those here that are law enforcement, those that have gone through medical trials and war and battle. It doesn't make sense in our minds as men to understand the only freedom we can find is through surrender. We have to say, I can't do this on my own. I have nothing left to give. And God's like, good. I will sustain you. I will carry you. And that could be through brothers. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That could be through other people. But I ask for direction of what the next step is to take. When I hear guys say, run to the cross, run to Jesus, I don't like that, to be honest with you. Because I've never had to run to Jesus. I've just had to turn around and He was right there. Amen. I'm running from Jesus often. But never have I had to run to the cross or run to Jesus because He's never left my side. He doesn't abandon us. I will not abandon you. I will not forsake you. We just sang some beautiful songs about those things. Community. Christ used community to probably be the biggest cure in my life. I can sit here and be on camera and say, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for community. When I say I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be breathing. I'd have been like, I'm out. I've lost a lot of people in my life to illness, but I've lost even more to suicide. Started in 7th grade, one of my best friends, and it happened 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Every single year I lost a friend. And sometimes when that starts happening, you think it's you. And then you're like, I don't want friends anymore because I don't want to feel this pain anymore. And to know that I was pushed to a point that I was almost that wound could have been shared by my family. But I get it. I get when people are at the end of the road and they feel like this is the only way out. Brothers, it's not. It's not. It's okay in those times of vulnerability to seek help and counseling. If anybody in this room tries to say that therapy or counseling isn't a need or isn't helpful, I'll fight you. Because that is a lie from the pit of hell. God talks about counselors. Scripture talks about counselors, talks about help, talks about community, talks about people helping you through your trials. My life changed when I started talking to a counselor. Someone else to be able to talk to, someone else to be able to share, some person that knows how to process things and run me through certain, tests, and this is how I process, this is how I do things. And it saved my life, it saved my marriage. I'm a better father, I'm a better supervisor, I'm a better husband, I'm a better brother because of it. But I also know that's probably the greatest step of strength or faith that I took so far, is allowing somebody else in. Like I said, I'm transparent and open about my life. Doesn't mean I'm going to trust you. Doesn't mean I'm going to let you be around my family or my kids. I'm very protective and I'm very close. My circle's very, very close. It's a small circle. But through community and through time, that circle's expanded. And now my kids have uncles that they never knew. Like, they're not by blood or relation, but they call them uncles. My wife has brothers. I can come home at times and my wife will be on the phone with one of my brothers. If that's the case, I trust you. Because that's what families do, they talk. Sure, appropriateness, boundaries, things like that are in place. But if they've helped rescue, God used them to help rescue me, He's helping them to rescue my family. My kids will get text messages from some of my brothers. Just thinking about you. Let me know how you're doing. And I can't tell you how much that is such a relief in my heart and soul. So reach out to others. Be vulnerable. This is all hard. Yep. Will it take its toll? Absolutely. Trials of many kinds. Like I said, for me, I can talk health, but I can talk a lot more than about health up here. I've gone through some stuff. We all have. We all have a story. But if you've known me long enough, and there's some t-shirts out there too, and someone might be wearing one right now, of the Men Do Hard Things. Thankfully, I paced life with a minister for the last 15 years, a men's ministry leader that taught a class on how men do hard things. And I have instilled that in my life, but I've also chit-chatted all the time with my son about it. And Floyd Ogle was over at my house one day, and my son was complaining about something. And he said, "Dad, this is just hard." And I looked at my son and I said, "What do men do?" And Cole said, "Men do hard things." If you know Floyd, he started crying like a little baby. But that's Floyd. Love him to death, but he's one of the strongest men I know, but he also is one of the most emotional. I cry all the time. I actually didn't know I could meet a man that cried as much as maybe me until I met some of my dear brothers. But it's probably one of their greatest strengths, is that they're willing to share their emotion. And so when he heard that, he was like, great. And then I incorporated it into a teaching, and I give all credit to God, and I give all credit to my minister Brandon that taught me that. But man, has that been one of the most powerful and impactful things in SoulCon and Men of Valor that we talk about. And you'll hear Eric say, what do men do? Hard things. You'll hear me on teaching calls with SoulCon. We do hard things. Good. Because that's us stepping into our calling. When you do something hard, it's amazing how everything, it becomes worth it. And you do have that feeling of accomplishment when you're able to step in and lead in love when you just have nothing left to give. But God has that just ability to say, well done, son, my good and faithful servant. Guys, he'll say that before we meet him, if you open up your heart to him. It does. It's not, I hope when I meet him, that's the words I hear at the gate. But I've heard it so many times when I just cry out to him at times, or if he's done something that's hard, and I chose that path instead of the easy path. And he's given me that, well done, son. Such a good feeling. And if you have sons and daughters, and they do good things, tell them the same thing. Well done. I'm proud of you. Your affirmations to your children, especially your sons, could be the greatest gift you give them. Because we generally as men suck at it. Well, they're doing what they're expected to do. Yeah. Doesn't mean we still can't say good job. Proud of you.
Right.
One of the hardest parts for me in my walk through all of this and all my leadership and all the trials that my wife and I have gone through is not working, not being on the go, not getting things done, constantly moving, constantly doing. So if you guys know Psalms 46, be still and know that I am God. Focus on be still, guys. If you pause enough, and if you sit in stillness with Christ, it's amazing the freedom you'll feel. I don't like being quiet. I'm also an ADHD medicated kid here too. Quieting things is not easy for me. Sitting in quiet, sitting in silence is not easy for me. But when I do, man, do I feel loved. Do I feel his warm and rapt embrace on me of like, I got you. It's okay. Cry. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to be angry with me. If we walk in relationship with Christ, it's okay to wrestle with him. I still haven't won, but we wrestle a lot. I was wrestling. But he's like, no, wrestle with me. I think sometimes we're taught poor practices in the church at times of not being angry, not being frustrated, well, if we believe God is God and God can solve things, cure things, and be all things, and my wife still has cancer, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be broken about that. It's okay to be upset. But take it to him. He can handle it. I take it out on him, not my family. When it was the other way around, whew, not a fun household in the Taylor household. Recognize, examine, trust, distinguish. Read the word for so many examples, guys. The word it's living. Almost every trial I have faced, there is a biblical example I can compare. Or say, hey, this is what this guy went through. This is what she went through. This is what Jesus went through. And it's amazing to feel that you're not alone. And when you open yourselves up and vulnerable enough to pace life with men that are in the same situations, pacing cancer with their brides, sitting with a mother or father that their son or daughter was just victimized, or sitting with a victim that their husband just pounded them to a pulp, and sitting with the vulnerable and going, you're not alone. You're not alone. And what do controlling men do? We isolate our loved ones from others. Why? Same way the devil isolates us from our community. To gain control. to imprison people. When you fail to surrender control over to Christ, yeah, you're imprisoned. Things that have helped me. I'm going to go through some of these quickly. Community. Lots of different things on there. Ways I've learned to cope. Exercise, journaling, huge for me. Receiving help. Hardest thing for me. You call me up and say you need anything, I promise you generally if you call me and say I need anything, I'm going to say no. But it's amazing how many brothers in community I've had that know better than to call me. They just show up. I had a friend, some of you guys that are in SoulCon or used to be, his name's Aaron Kirchhoff from Team Oregon. His name's Aaron Cade, which a lot of people know him as. There are more than a handful of times in my life that I've got a phone call from Aaron and he's in my driveway. He doesn't want me to come out. He doesn't want me to, he just wants me not to be freaked out that there's a car parked in my driveway. But hey, I'm here just to pray over your household and your family. Or, hey, I brought over dinner. Just brought stuff. Me receiving help is really difficult. But I've realized, and God's told me, do not cheat out your family, your brothers, and your loved ones from being able to serve you and bless you. That's what they're created for. So guys, let others into your pain. Let others in. They can handle it. We try to protect them at times. Think, oh, I don't want to, they can handle it. If they're asking, and those that can't, it's okay. They will slowly kind of fall aside. I learned a lot about who my true friends and brothers were through trials. A lot of talk out there. A lot of talk. God used community to break me out of isolation. He allowed it to allow others in. And I always say community, same thing with men do hard things. My friend Brandon will often say, community is the cure. It's not taking anything away from God because God created community. Jesus didn't need a pace of 12. He didn't. He chose to. So, let others in, pace life with others. And then take some inventory right now as I say this question of, who is God trying to use in your life that you're ignoring? Because it's not who you would have chosen. Sometimes God has the perfect person for you. And you're like, we don't have a lot in common. Or we don't have this. Open yourselves up just to hear what they have to bring. How they want to serve and how they want to bless you. Because it might be exactly what. It was the prayer you asked for. And God's like, I sent them to you 5 times. I sent them to you 5 times. And you're like, not this person. Not this person. Open yourself up to being vulnerable. Craig Rochelle had a quote on here. It says, we might impress people with our strengths, but we connect with people through our weaknesses. Very true for me. Connected more through my weaknesses anytime than my strengths. Brothers, learn proper ways to cope. On there you guys can see the healthy ways and then the destructive ways. We are really good in the destructive category. There's not a man in this room right now that on that right-hand column, one of these things doesn't apply. Probably the hardest one for me is the rumination of my shame and my mistakes, of the areas that I failed. And like Travis said in his message, and Eric said in his message, and I'm sure JC is going to say in his message, and I'm sure Randall is going to say in his message, because I'm getting out of God's way. I think what God wants us to hear this week is you are not your past. When you are adopted, we are to live in shame no more. There's that scene that I talked about in a recent SoulCon call on The Chosen, where Philip talking to Matthew as they're walking after Peter was just kind of mean to Matthew. Did this happen? Probably not. It's chosen. But he said, man, what happened? And Matthew was like, oh, it's okay. I used to be a tax collector. And Philip's response was, I used to be something else too. But when I met the Messiah, I am is all that matters. Nothing of what I was, nothing of who I used to be. I am a follower of Christ. I am his son. I am his chosen. I am his adopted. That's all that matters anymore. So if you have this destructive pattern, like I do, especially the isolation, pushing things away, please, guys, shift over to the healthiest side over there. It's possible, but it's going to take work. There is no shame in receiving help, guys. Dark days will come. Look at David and Jonathan. There's friends that often will call me their Jonathan. And then there's times they call me their David, and we switch them often. Paul and Barnabas. The encourager, the supporter, we all need that. Again, do not stifle other people's blessings with your own pride, insecurities, or I got this. No, you don't. The Bible's full of examples. Full of examples. Probably my favorite SoulCon shirt that we had was just in a recent challenge, Gideon. And on the back it says, exhausted yet pursuing. I have never had a term that applied that was more applicable to me. And that is something I will cherish and carry. And I've read the Bible. I've listened to it, I've read it, and I never had that takeaway from Gideon. I didn't. I think he was exhausted yet pursued. Christ wants us to still pursue him in our exhaustion. And every time I do, I'm sustained. He gives me that strength. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to be exhausted. It's not okay to quit. The story of Joseph's another one of those. But I'm not going to go through the full details, so if you guys don't know it, dive into Scripture and do it. But in the beginning, you see all these great things. But then, nope, brothers weren't too happy. And I love the term that life was good until it isn't, or wasn't. For some of you, life will be good until it's not. Some of you have 150 examples you could share with me when life hasn't been good. I know a lot of your guys' stories. Thank you for sharing your stories with me. Joseph, betrayed, was a slave, was lied about, was imprisoned. Guess what? God had a plan for all of that. I don't say God causes these things. It's the brokenness and sin that exists in the world. It's just God will take that brokenness and pain and sin and say, okay, watch out. Look what I'm going to do with this. And look what he did with Joseph. It's amazing. Amazing story. If you haven't dove into it, dive into it. But we have to find God, not excuses in our story. Some of you guys might not be great fans of Disney and all that stuff, and I'm okay with that. We don't need to talk about Disney. But one of the greatest takeaways I've had from a Disney movie is just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Sometimes swimming looks like treading water in place for a while. But keep treading. Trials and pain have purpose, folks. In all things, God is working together for the good. We know this. But you have to trust it. Travis talked about that. You have to trust it. Worship leader today, you have to trust it and believe it. Not in some things, but in all things. The greater the pain, the greater opportunity there is for God's redemption to be put on display for everyone to see the beauty in it. Man, have a lot of people seen that in our lives. My personal life. And it's amazing that he's allowed, he comforts us so we can comfort others. And when I finally surrendered to him and said, okay, what do you want me? What am I? And he's like, I want you to reach out. I want you to face life with people that go through things that you go through. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Guys, it's exhausting. I'll tell you. It brings up some tough times. And I've had brothers that aren't as fortunate as I have been, and their brides are in the arms of Jesus right now. Their children in the arms of Jesus right now. But it was an honor to pace that with them. But man, I could not imagine. I'm sitting here today still with my bride, still with my children. But I know he would comfort me in those moments. Our trials have purpose. Guys, people are watching. Well, when you're called to be a disciple, when you're called to go, to baptize folks, to introduce them to Christ, to love and lead them, it's got purpose. By this, all people will know you are my disciples if you have loved one another. One of the things I wrote on here is how we handle trials can be the greatest acts of affirmations to our brides, our children, our community. I'm tired of just hearing people say they love their families. I want to start seeing people live and show it. Just a word if there's not an action behind it. My favorite friend again, James. Lord has promised to those who love him. You can get through whatever you're going to face. He promises to always be near. We are called to stand the test. We're called to persevere in these trials. But you all know guys that face these trials without God, and we all know guys that face these trials with God. It looks very different. Their lives look a lot different. Their marriages may look a lot different. Their addictions may look a lot different. Because they're running from instead of to. You guys have a decision to make. You gonna stay in it and only focus on the pain and bitterness? Or are you gonna make the decision to serve rather than stay in your sorrow? What makes God so amazing to me is that he gives us the choice. Because I often think if I was God and had the ability and power of God, I would remove choice from a lot of people. Yeah. I would remove choice from a lot of people. But God loves us so much that he doesn't want to be like that totalitarian God that is going to force it upon us. He wants us to choose it. So God gives you guys the choice to serve, to love, to lead well. Jeremiah, seek me. He desires for us to seek and find fulfillment and not abandonment. When you listen to someone else's pain while you are also in pain, this is not help, this is love. You're not helping them, you're loving them. I think we focus too much on health or help rather than love. Especially when it's not a job you're being paid for. You're doing it out of the kindness of your heart. You're doing it because this is what Jesus would have done. So what the disciples showed us how to walk. We all have those people in our lives. We're like, we always wish I was a little more like them. Change. Do it. What's stopping you? We know who's the one stopping you. And yes, is it the adversary? Sure. But often it's you. So we're all going to have those seasons in life. Guys, your story matters. Waiting room seasons. Man, have we had waiting room seasons. Be still, know I'm God. Wait on the Lord. For how long? Tired of waiting.
75.
There you go. As awesome as it is, it's frustrating. Because McDonald's screwed it for all of us. I want it my way. Have it your way. If that was McDonald's, I don't know. But as you navigate and endure this season, take a look, take inventory in the progress. Trust me, you have made some progress. After you reflect, take the next step. Only God knows when you will see the breakthrough or the purpose in this season. The day you think you cannot go any further may be the day that the breakthrough happens. It may not be on this side of heaven. It's okay. But I don't want to live my life in a way of like, well, it's not going to happen this side of heaven, so I'm just going to stop. God will renew you and restore you. It's always that beautiful old word we hear all the time, let go and let God. It's cheesy. I think it is. But it's true. Surrender. A prayer that has helped me. Lord, I feel empty and afraid. Please fill me up. I surrender my life and circumstances under your control. While everything around me is being shaken, I choose not to fear. I will be still in your presence and recognize that you are God. You are my very present help in time of troubles. Or times of trouble. I have this, the daily bread, or a lot of it can be called a lot of things in my office, at home. And before I go to bed every night, I'm journaling and I look up. And I hope to be old, gray, sitting there giving thanks to God, regardless of what life's thrown my way. And Isaiah promises to renew and restore us and revive us. They shall walk and not be weary. They shall walk and not grow faint or be faint. He will renew your strength, guys. When life is chaotic, we must find a place where we can find peace. And this is often found just sitting in the presence of God. Find your quiet spot. For me, it's the forest. Take a walk in the forest. That's where I get grounded. Just look up and look at, he created all of this. For some people, it's when they're in water, or looking out at water, or climb up on Rattlesnake Ridge and look over the mountains, or Rattlesnake Canyon, whatever it's called. But look over and say, whew, want to stand in awe for a moment? If he did all that, he can make and provide comfort in your pain. Guys, these are some of the lessons I learned. I learned how to lean into the hard things. I did okay doing it alone, I'll tell you, I did okay. A lot of people would have looked, man, he's got it all together, he's doing good. Look at that. But once I opened myself up to allowing others to pace with me, that's how I learned how to lead and love others well. It's through my vulnerability. It's okay to struggle. Control must be surrendered. And we're going through trials. When you're going through life is a trial. And you try to control it. We all know what that looks like. But when you let go and surrender and say, God, Jesus, take the wheel. Another cheesy saying, but it's true. Jesus, take the wheel. It's amazing how light you feel after that. Even though I'm exhausted, I must pursue God, bride, children, community. Hold on to hope. And that last thing, like I said, nothing changes unless something changes. When you're looking at it, man, I wish I could do that. Do it. I'll say it again, do it. You can. Men, we must walk in a manner worthy of the calling in which you've been called. One of peace, power, respect, dignity, and love. You've heard some of the, choose your heart. You hear it on some of the podcasts out there. You hear it on, might even be Jocko, and some things like that out there with leadership. Bible's full of examples that tells us to choose our heart. You can't run away from it. You can, but you're not going to be loving and leading your family well. So if you want to step into the calling of loving and leading your family well, you have to run into it, not away from it. We must deepen our faith. Man, did I have a kiddie pool faith for a majority of my life. Or do you have one that's deep? And I feel like I have a lot deeper faith than I had before. I want to have the abyss. I do. Peter in the boat, when he took his eyes off Jesus, what happened? But he stepped out. And the other example too, when when they're in the boat, why did Jesus say, throw the nets into the deep? And that's where they got their greatest catch. The ministry I talked about often from my best friend, one of my best friends that runs, it's called Into the Deep. I love it. Because that is where we find transformation and change, when we're willing to just throw the net out in the deep and trust God, because that was against all fishing rules. God's like, I know, but I'm God. Just throw it out. I'm honored to be given this ability and privilege to be able to speak to you guys today. Do I feel that I'm worthy? It's my surprise, some of you. Yeah, because God says I am. It's not my feeling, because if it was just me feeling it, that's not what my response would be. I hear so many men that stay in that shame now. I'm not worthy of this. I'm not this. Bold. Christ says you are. How do you love and lead your family well? By being the man God designed you to be.
Yeah.
This world is full of little boys out there that women have had to step into our roles because we have failed. But you see, I truly believe I can feel it in society and culture right now. I can. Change is coming.
Yep.
Let's lead that.
Amen. Amen.
And that change might only happen in your small community. Awesome. You're called to lead where you're at.
Yep.
But if you're not leading at home, and you're leading better in other areas, you're not loving well.
Yep.
It starts within your home. And I learned that the hard way. I still feel I probably lead better outside my home than I do in my home. But they also see every single part of me. I'd get fired if my employment saw every single part of me. You can't say that. No, you're right, I can't. I shouldn't say that to my family either, but why is this important? And I put my on here, but you really, when it says because my, this is you guys reading it. So because your pain only becomes suffering when you refuse to share it. You guys have ever read the book Suffering by Paul David Tripp? I've never finished it. I'm 6 chapters in, and I think I'm 2 years into reading it. Because it's hard. But that's a huge point that he makes within his book of we have to share it. Your family, your bride, your children, your community, they're worth it for you to step into this calling. You're worth it. If you've accepted Christ in your life, and He is your Savior, and He is your Father, if you don't believe you're worth it, you're calling Him a liar. I'll say it again too. Said it earlier in the talk. You're calling Him a liar. Look what His Son did on the cross. Was that all for nothing? Was that all done just for like dog and pony show? Hey, look at this. No, He took it all. So since He took it all, give it all. That's what He calls us to do, is give it all. He created us to love and lead well. What did He say to Adam? Look at the creation story. Created like this is yours. Like, and that, yeah. Wish Adam did a better job. But we have examples to look for, guys that did great and guys that didn't. Especially if we want to read Kings. Guys that didn't do well. But when we step into the role we are originally designed to do, our God-given role, the perceived burden of leadership diminishes. Will it be easy? No. But this is a promise I will take to my grave. It is always worth it.
Yes.
Brothers, my challenge for all of you is to leave here today, leave this conference, and go home different. If you're already doing a good job in this area, If you're already leading and living well, keep doing a good job. Strive to do better, but keep doing a good job. If not, find someone in your life, a close brother that is, or a close example that is, and humble yourself enough to ask, hey, can you mentor me? And I'll tell you right now, I'm looking at this audience. Some of you aren't in your 20s. Some of you aren't in your 30s. Some of you aren't in your 40s or 50s. A mentor does not have to be someone older than you. Doesn't. That's also our pride that gets in the way of that. Saying, oh, that 20-year-old doesn't understand. That 20-year-old may have gone through more hell than you have in 65 years. So he may have. And God may have chosen that 20-some-year-old to be the person to mentor you through trials. And you have something to give him too. I don't know a mentor that hasn't learned from me. I just haven't. I don't know a mentee that hasn't taught me. Be vulnerable to your brides, to your children. It's okay for our kids to know we're in pain. It's okay for our kids to know we're hurting. It's okay for our kids to know, like, that guy, Dad's having a tough day. It's okay to tell your kids, you know what, Dad's scared too. Because if they don't see you scared and they're scared, they're going to think something's wrong with them.
Yeah.
Your mom has cancer. Those are hard words for kids to hear. Your mom's having a surgery. And then you have your 15-year-old or 14-year-old daughter say, I heard Nana and Papa talking and saying that she might not wake up. Yep. Mom might not wake up. Oh, I could have said, oh, where'd you hear that? Da, 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 like just lied to her. But I said, yeah, that's the risk we all take. And we know Mom. We know where she's at, but I truly believe Mom will be okay. I think, so let's just pray for that. Give us an opportunity to take it before God. The work I do, hard. The hardest part is working with the people that caused that pain. But they're worthy of love too. God reminded me of that. I prayed, why, God, why? I've never heard the auditory voice of God. I haven't. If you have, awesome. I have not. But I prayed to God 5 years into my career working with people that commit sexual crimes against children. And I asked God why. And it's clear as day, he said, because they're my children too. And I sat there and went, damn. Like, oh. And I love them. But loving means holding people accountable too. Yep. And guiding them. And being there with them. But that was the biggest wake-up call for me. It's because we think about, yeah, you tie a millstone around some people's neck and see how they swim. That's where we go. And God has said, my people are worthy of love. And I've called you to love and lead well, not just your family, not just your community, but everyone. Yeah. So please, guys, my challenge is to you is to leave here today transformed, renewed, knowing that you're not alone. And accept the challenge. It's possible. If I have learned this lesson, trust me, it's possible. I'm not a quick learner. But I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to share with you. I appreciate you all so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? I'm trying to think. I guess we're at the time, aren't we? Yeah, it is 5:30, but if you guys have questions,